Hello, folks.
Hello, everybody. So it's 12 o'clock.
Brisk day here in New York. Yes, I love it.
Fall's coming early, it seems.
No, I'm here for it.
Yeah, I am too. So what are we talking about today? We're talking about
Day 30.
Day 30. We made it to 30 days every day. Thank you, those of you who've been with us every day for the last 30 days.
It's so draining. I'm so exhausted. But here we are.
Here we are. It's been amazing. I've had a really amazing time doing it, and but yeah, I'm glad we're gonna go down to 3 days a week. Hi there, Master Hurricane. So today we're talking about toxic relationships in power exchange, and the research was incredible. There was so much out there where I've had not much to go with. Today I had plenty. So Master Hurricane sent their list. Thank you very much for sending it along, since this was one of your questions. And then I found 10 signs of dangerous doms,
Ooh.
5 signs of bad submissives, how to spot red flags in a toxic dominant partner, and then something called toxic enabling, which I'd never heard of, which is interesting, right? If you're, I guess,
Is that 11 pages to read?
well, we're not reading them all, but yeah, I got it for research purposes. And then regular signs of toxic relationships, which is probably a lot like that. So I'm labeling them by topic so we can decide what we want to go over.
There you go.
So we could probably start with these. Where did I just put my reading glasses?
You know what we can do? Like a lot of these that we've done over the 30 days
Mm-hmm.
is we can create lives specifically on these topics where like we can dissect toxic behavior in BDSM and do it like on one of the evenings, right, where we're covering important topics.
Like on a Tuesday?
Like,
Or
yeah, like on the Tuesday, maybe instead of dissecting the questions, maybe we allot 20 minutes to each question on the Tuesdays, and on the other nights we address things like this because this is a big deal.
Yeah. No, there's a lot here.
So we'll play around with the
Yeah.
ideas of what we're doing, what we're talking about.
Yeah, because we also have now we're going to spread out into Tuesday night, Thursday night, and Saturday night, all at 6 o'clock. So we're going to do three days a week instead of 7, but we're still going to do it. Yeah, so we can stretch out into topics where there's more meat to them to talk about.
Yeah.
So, toxic behaviors in relationships. Toxic behaviors are actions or patterns that consistently undermine the emotional, psychological, and sometimes physical well-being of one or both partners. Recognizing these behaviors is crucial for identifying unhealthy dynamics and taking steps towards healthier interactions. Here are some common toxic behaviors. Gaslighting. It's a manipulative tactic where one partner causes the other to question their own reality, memories, or perceptions. It is a form of psychological abuse that can lead to confusion, self-doubt, and the loss of confidence in one's judgment.
And what they're doing is lying to gaslighting is lying to a person to making them believe what they know to be true not.
Right. It's
It's a
lying
fancy
with
word.
an intention.
It's a fancy word for saying lying with intention.
Yeah.
Like lying with the intention of manipulating.
Yeah. There's one thing. It's one thing if I lie about something I've done. It's another thing if I lie in such a way to try to make you think that something that is true for you isn't true for you. It's a very specific kind of lying, and it has a very negative impact. I've been gaslit, and the way you know you're being gaslit is when you feel like you're crazy. You're in a relationship, you're sure you know something's for real, and now it's been called to question enough times that you start to say, oh my goodness, did I not remember that right? Am I crazy? Et cetera, et cetera. It's like, yeah. Degrading, unless it's consensual and kink. Degrading behavior involves belittling comments, mockery, or criticism that makes a partner feel worthless. This can severely impact self-esteem and create an environment where one partner feels inferior and unworthy of respect.
You know what's unworthy of this fucking respect is this goddamn mosquito that just got me.
Oh, no.
I'm gonna get that motherfucker. Sorry.
He takes that seriously.
Me and mosquitoes, we don't get along.
Yeah.
I'm the mosquito hunter.
Yes, he is the mosquito.
Sorry. Back to
refusing to allow any time to be out of the dynamic, right? So I'm just reading comments.
yeah, there's a lot coming through.
A lot of comments already.
I can jump on.
Okay, sure.
You said degrading?
Yeah.
Did you read it already?
I did read it already.
3, hypercritical attitude. Being hypercritical refers to persistent criticism over minor issues or creating problems where none exist. This constant scrutiny can lead to feelings of inadequacy and a sense of that one is never good enough. Blame shifting. In toxic relationships, blame shifting occurs when one partner refuses to acknowledge their own mistakes and instead shifts all the blame onto the other person. This creates a skewed narrative where the victim feels responsible for all relationship issues. 5, excessive jealousy. This manifests as possessiveness and unfounded accusations of infidelity or flirting. This behavior often leads to controlling actions that restrict the other person's social interactions.
Yeah, that's...
let me get these papers down here.
That's a dangerous one.
Yeah. Controlling and domineering. Controlling behavior includes dictating what the other person can do, who they can see, and how they should think or feel. Such domineering strips away autonomy and freedom, making the victim feel trapped. Emotional manipulation. This involves using tactics like guilt tripping or playing the victim to control another's behavior. This creates an imbalance in the relationship where one partner's needs are consistently sidelined. 3, isolation from support networks. Isolation occurs when one partner subtly cuts off the other's connections with friends and family, making it difficult for them to seek help or support outside of the relationship.
Yeah, that's battered stuff.
I knew a leather family that operated like this.
No.
Recognizing these toxic behaviors is essential for anyone looking to assess their relationship's health and take appropriate action, whether that means seeking help, setting boundaries, or ending the relationship altogether.
I think it's reasonable to have some of this in a relationship that comes up around things. I think it can be incidental, but systemically, and some of those things to me are more egregious than others in terms of telltale signs that you're in a relationship that's really toxic.
Yeah. So then you have navigating toxic behavior in relationships requires a thoughtful and strategic approach. How to navigate toxic behavior. Welcome to my last dynamic. I was always wrong, in trouble, didn't know what I was doing, etc. Wow. Recognize the signs of toxic behavior. The first step is to identify the behaviors present in your relationship. Common signs include lack of support. Instead of feeling uplifted, you feel belittled or inadequate. Persistent unhappiness, constant tension, arguments, or feelings of dissatisfaction are prevalent. Communication breakdown. Conversations may devolve into insults or silence, leaving issues unresolved. Control and dominance. One partner may dictate the other's actions or feelings. Neglect and manipulation. Emotional needs are disregarded, often leading to compliance through guilt. Understanding these signs can help you assess the health of your relationship. Yeah. Assess your feelings and needs. Take time to reflect on how the relationship affects your emotional well-being. Ask yourself questions like, do I feel safe and respected? Are my emotional needs being met? Am I constantly anxious or walking on eggshells? Then this self-assessment will clarify whether the relationship's worth maintaining or if it's time to consider change. Set clear boundaries. Once you recognize toxic behaviors, it's crucial to establish boundaries. Communicate what behaviors are unacceptable and what consequences will follow if those boundaries are crossed. This step is vital to reclaiming your autonomy and respect within the relationship. Seek support. Reach out to trusted friends, family members, or professionals who can provide emotional support and guidance. Sharing your experiences with others can offer new perspectives and reinforce your decision-making process. Create a safety plan if necessary. If the relationship involves abuse or poses a threat to your safety, develop a safety plan that includes finding a safe place to stay, saving money, having emergency contacts readily available. Organizations that specialize in supporting individuals in abusive relationships can offer valuable resources. 6, gradual disengagement. In some cases, it might be beneficial to slowly reduce contact with the toxic individual. This approach allows for less confrontation while giving you time to adjust emotionally and logistically. 7, direct conversation. When safe, have an open conversation about your feelings regarding the toxic behavior. Focus on expressing your feelings rather than blaming the other person. Clearly state your decision about how you wish to proceed in the relationship without engaging in negotiations. 8, cut off contact if necessary. If your safety or well-being is at risk, cutting off all contact may be essential. This could involve blocking phone numbers, emails, and social media accounts associated with that person.
Heavy duty stuff.
Seek professional help. Consider consulting with counselors or therapists who can provide strategies on managing toxic relationships effectively. They can also assist in building self-esteem and developing healthier patterns for future interactions. 10, focus on self-care. Prioritize self-care during this challenging process by engaging in activities that promote mental and physical well-being. Exercise, hobbies, meditation, and spending time with supportive loved ones can also restore balance. 11, reflect and learn from experience. After navigating through toxicity, take time to reflect on what you've learned from this experience about yourself and relationships in general. Understanding past mistakes can help avoid similar situations in future relationships while fostering personal growth.
It reminds me of when you're talking about the exit strategies or the ways around it, right? I sort of dated a guy in the lifestyle. I don't know that we were necessarily considering a dynamic, but we were sort of involved, and we went to Kinky camp together. You want to find out about somebody? Travel with them.
While you tell the story, I love the story. I need to get a hand towel. I'm going to heat it up.
Okay, because you're in a lot of pain.
Yeah,
okay.
I'll be back.
So anyway, so we went down to Kinky camp, and no sooner did we get in the car on the way down than all of a sudden another side of him totally came to the surface. Like, crazy. By the end of the weekend, I did this thing that it said, like, back away slowly. Like, by the time we were packing to leave camp on Sunday, I was at the point where I was like, I just agreed with anything that got said. I was very quiet. I didn't argue or fight back or anything. I pretended it was like a 4-hour drive. It was later, so I was like, I pretended like I was asleep the whole time. He drove me back to my house. I took my stuff out, and I was like, okay, thanks. That was really great. Bye. Never talked to him again. Thank God, though, I was only like, we'd just been like dating. It wasn't a big deal. Like, you know, it wasn't a primary thing or anything, but it's hard. It's like when you realize somebody's kind of crazy, you know, you need to back away. But it's harder when when there's higher stakes, right? Like when you have things together, people, kids, property, you know, community. Like if you've been in a dynamic for a while and you have a lot of your friends are in common, a lot of the people that you play with and go to events with are in common, it can be a lot harder to separate. It can be a lot harder, and the longer it goes on for, I know this personally, the longer it goes on for, the harder it is to like step up and set boundaries. But it's really important to do it. One of the things I used to tell myself is that if I had allowed certain behaviors to go on, and then suddenly like I became aware of the fact that I didn't want them to be that anymore, I felt like because I had allowed them up until then, somehow I wasn't entitled to set a boundary now. And that's not true. Like the minute you become aware of that something needs to change, it's okay to start setting boundaries as soon as you can. So anyway, that's some of my take on the things that you were just reading about toxicity and relationships and stuff. So this next bit is about 10 points to check if your dom is dangerous.
Can I read?
You can read.
Narcissists, so-called wannabe doms, and manipulative people are everywhere. This sounds like a 60 Minutes broadcast opening. The BDSM community is no exception. And in fact, the opposite is often the case, as people here are more vulnerable, honest, and unconditional than in normal dating life. It's easier to end up with someone who manipulates, unsettles, and restricts you than you think. But how do you tell the difference between a strict dom and abusive behavior? Here are 10 questions you can ask yourself to see if your relationship shows signs of narcissistic or abusive behavior. Are you afraid of your dom? Not of the consequences or the punishment, but of the person. Ooh, that's a good one. A tight feeling in your chest that automatically sets in, fear of the outcome of the evening, cold hands at the thought of the encounter, or even panic before meeting. These are all well signs that you should be taken seriously. Nervousness or a little tingling anxiety are often normal when you have a close emotional bond with someone or punishment is imminent. However, this feeling should definitely not always be present. And that's wetter than it was hotter. Is dom threatening to leave you or punish you through withdrawal if you do not obey? Few things are as...
That's huge. Threatening. Any kind of threatening to the end of a relationship as a manipulation is horrible.
So let's see. Few things are as cruel as being deprived of a loved one. Sometimes a break can be a good thing for a relationship, and giving other people space is very important. The consequence of abandonment, however, is a highly manipulative one because it forces you to act if you don't want to be blamed in the end. Depriving yourself of time together, contact, or conversation also leaves you feeling insecure, confused, out of control, and alone.
One of the things that I was taught a long time ago is if you value your relationship, no matter what happens when you fight, never threaten the relationship, never put the relationship on the table, because you can destroy a relationship that way. Just fight it through if you're not with a narcissistic dom wannabe.
A strong opening. Does dom threaten you with violence if you don't submit? Consequences, punishment, rules are not foreign words in BDSM. This also includes actions that are considered violence in other circles. Nevertheless, there is a massive difference to your personal limits, which must be accepted without if and but. We're not talking about a brat who demands a consequence and provokes a punishment with a cheeky make sure of it. Challenging and scratching are common ways of dealing between tamer and power bottom. Arbitrary, unconsensual, non-consensual violence, however, is a different level. Violence here means breaking, overriding agreements, ruthless taking. The mere threat of it does not leave a happy, tingling sensation, not even a guilty conscience or slight anger, but fear. Making threats is a clear sign that someone has a tendency towards violence. In fact, threats are already violence, and someone who has crossed the line has already become a perpetrator.
It's hard stuff to hear.
Yeah. Is dom trying to bribe you to do something? Whether it's expensive gifts, special trips, or other concessions, bribes are more than clothes, great food, and pretty toys. Of course, small motivations can be a good incentive to push yourself a little or offer a reward for an effort. But promising material things for crossing your boundaries is manipulative and dangerous behavior.
Also, using it as a means of trying to make up for bad behavior. Right? Like, oh, I did this bad thing, or I treated you this bad way, but here's this great gift, as if like that's going to make up for the idea that like the not taking responsibility part that we talked about earlier, like when the one partner can't ever take responsibility for themselves. Yeah. Like by owning what they said or did and doing something to like ensure that they don't do it again, or that they're working on it, to just say, oh, here's something like that should be good enough.
Yeah. Let's see. Then we have, does dom make you feel guilty or self-doubt if you can't or don't want to do something? BDSM can make us feel invincible, and attraction is a unique ambrosia for our self-perception. This is why some egos in the scene can be so inflated, having experienced these intense and revealing experiences. They feel almost priestly in giving these experiences, leading intense sessions and dynamics. However, some can lose touch with the consequences, status, and well-being of the submissive person, because a session can also be destructive. It can push you to the limits of your physical, mental, and emotional abilities or capacities. If someone compares you to another person at such a vulnerable moment, belittles you, or even attacks this vulnerability, this can have a serious consequence on your self-perception.
So there's a question here. Is this only for DOMs abusing subs, or for any abuse in dynamics?
I would approach this to any top, bottom, dom, sub, either way, right? Absolutely. It's like the minute something goes against your feeling safe, that's an issue. And this is I believe this is from the dom perspective. There's also a submissive perspective too, which we're definitely going to get into, because there are particularly different types of manipulation. Critically questioning orders and making derogatory comments about them is also an absolute no-go. On the contrary, it shows a lack of respect if the boundaries you've communicated are repeatedly criticized or ridiculed. Can you read number 6, Mom? Let me heat this up again.
Okay. Does the person make you feel unwanted and bad about yourself? Strategic emotional exploitation is, on the one hand, conscious manipulation. On the other hand, it leads straight to dependency. One example of this is constant criticism of your appearance, performance, or even your character, because it leads you to question yourself, your decisions more and more, and to develop doubts about your judgment, opinions, abilities, and appearance. Reflect carefully on whether you have heard any of these in approach or expression from your Dom. This also sounds like gaslighting to me. This is the same kind of thing. I feel like gaslighting is anything that causes you to doubt yourself and your judgment and your ability to think for yourself. It says, there's comments here that says yes, because a sub can do the same to a Dom. And unfortunately, people have been in those positions, and that's probably why we're talking about this today anyway. Have you ever felt abused or bad after sexual acts? I think I'm not supposed to say that, right? Sometimes it takes a moment to process a session or even an intimate interaction. In a situation where you are directly confronted with your partner, certain actions, gestures, or feelings can feel distorted into the positive. This is intensified where you are still on a session high, the endorphins are flowing through your body, and the dopamine is still in your brain firing. But as soon as you feel like you've been hurt or pushed into something, or you just feel bad, something has probably gone wrong. You have traces the next day that weren't discussed and that you can't look at now. Do you have a phantom sensation of touch that makes you shudder? These are all signs of intimate or physical abuse. The word abuse sounds drastic, but it is probably appropriate. Were your personal needs, example for contact, food, rest, clothing, or medical care, ignored? Dom gets served first is one of those phrases that can be banished from the BDSM world these days. While many submissive people value the service aspect to their Dom, there are two things that yet take precedence over all play, pleasure, and mindset: your safety and your well-being. Yes, sometimes a session is uncomfortable, and that can be fantastic, but there is a difference between uncomfortable and dangerous for you. You need to go to the bathroom, need to eat to stabilize yourself, need a jacket because you're cold, or feel like you have to leave the room. These are all cases in which a session should be canceled or interrupted. If your requests are or were ignored, your top is not respecting your needs, but these are essential for your well-being.
That last one about the touch in your body, the physical reaction, I get that.
That shudder feeling, that's not a good shudder feeling, that's a bad shudder feeling. Yeah.
Next page over here.
Has your Dom questioned your loyalty and faithfulness? As soon as someone starts a sentence with "if you really" and continues ironically, alarm bells should ring. And continues unironically. So if they say "if you really" and they're not kidding, alarm bells should ring. If you're in an honest, healthy relationship, then you should be able to talk about everything. Conflicts are never out of the question, but your honesty should never be questioned. Because loyalty is incredibly important in DS relationships, these doubts are particularly painful. Loyalty is a sensitive issue in any relationship, whether open, closed, or poly. Questioning it for no reason in order to unsettle you and get your own way is deliberately working against the basis of the relationship. So 10, does your Dom ignore your set boundaries and your safe word? Your safe word is your emergency parachute, your safety anchor, and a clear sign for stop, no further. It is similar with set and agreed limits, which must be accepted without ifs and buts. A person who does not recognize these and does not accept a safe word is only focused on their own needs. Of course, borderline experiences are exciting and intense, but they are often exactly the experience we want or strive for. But it is important and requires trust in your partner to take these steps towards boundary experiences carefully. A person who is careless or careless about your limits simply exceeds them is not respecting your self-assessment. If you have clearly communicated that this is my limit beforehand, anything beyond that is an invasion of your comfort zone. So if you've answered yes to several, either or even all of these questions, then you are in a relationship that is probably not good for you. They don't necessarily have to be a narcissist or deliberately evil, but in the end, it doesn't matter how you call it. The only important thing is how you deal with these points and responses and what decisions you make. So that was 10 points about bad DOMs, or a way to know that if you're dominant relationship. Yes, we'll put in terms of this list somewhere. Yeah, I saved all of the links and we'll put them up. We'll post them. So
what I'd like to do is maybe get them into each YouTube video.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
The details
yeah, we're gonna put these up on YouTube, and then we can put the
associated links with it.
The links with the YouTube videos. That's a great idea. I'm gonna have to go back and do some research to find them all, because we didn't start taking down the tags until recently. So let's see.
Setting a boundary and using a safe word resulted in the end of my dynamic instead of opening up the conversation. Wow, Octavia, thank you.
Yeah, that's really tough. Let's see. Critically needed, appreciate both. Oh, yeah, no worries, Big Basic. We're happy to do that. So then, now 5 signs of bad submissives.
Oh, you read all that?
Yeah, we're done. We're done with with that. With the 10 bad signs of bad DOMs. So now we have 5. I found 5 signs of bad submissives. This came from a website called boundtogether.net. No limits. This is one of the biggest and most common issues with bad submissives. On the surface, it may seem like a sub who claims to have no limits is up for anything, but really it indicates that the sub has thought very little about what they want or don't want in a BDSM scene. Even the edgy...
Or they don't have the right vocabulary and they aren't sure.
There you go.
Because that's the thing, is they throw the blame on without understanding, well, maybe they don't know.
That's fair.
So that's their only answer without knowing there's more to it.
Well, that could be, but I mean, if you don't know anything in life, you can just show up and say, I don't know.
But people don't do that. People don't do that now. They've been in the lifestyle for 20 years, they don't do that.
That's fair. That's fair.
So I just wanted to throw that out there for the subs who don't know, and they don't know, but they don't know yet. That's for them.
Okay, so if you don't know and you don't know that you don't know, don't ever say you're into everything. Nobody's into everything. You're just not. There's too many things. You know. So I've met people who are close, but those people can still articulate the things they're interested in.
Yeah.
Even the edgiest of edge players have limits. Broken limbs, severed fingers, probably all hard limits. Although subs who say they have no limits may think they're giving a dom what they want, any dom who can be trusted at all would never take this declaration seriously and likely wouldn't play with such a sub. Rather than expanding the possibilities of a scene, no limits restricts what can happen because the dom lacks a clear idea of what the parameters are. Poor or dishonest communication skills. DOMs rely on subs' ability to communicate their likes, dislikes, limits, and more. Without this information, DOMs have very little to go on and could end up constructing a less than ideal or even dangerous scene. Some examples of poor or dishonest communication on the part of a sub include refusing to safe word even when necessary, failing to indicate a key component of their behavior during the scene, for instance, going nonverbal while in subspace, or not disclosing relevant health information that impacts the scene. Oddly enough, we have a negotiation form that helps ferret some of that stuff out. Communication is key, not only for an enjoyable scene, but to ensure that the dom doesn't accidentally injure the sub due to a lack of information. Now, if you do a thorough negotiation and you ask these questions and you get like wrong answers, that's a totally different thing to me.
I was going to say poor and dishonest are two different things.
Yes. If you have a negotiation where neither of you think to talk about injuries or illnesses, you just forget to do it. And so then the sub forgets to mention that, they had surgery somewhere, or that they had some condition that would like impact the scene you're about to do, then you're kind of both forgot to talk about it. But if specifically asked and not spoken to,
like, are you on any pain meds, and the person says no when they are in fact are,
yes,
that's hugely not good.
Yes.
Poor as a person with experience, it's my responsibility to develop a negotiation process that makes sure I cover all the bases that are important for me in order for me to feel safe, and in order for me to make sure that you are informed on what you're consenting to.
Right.
Ethically and morally. But people don't start there, right? So it's like people start on day one, and
right.
People start with not knowing what to say.
Right, and they start with not knowing what to say in a negotiation, or even that there is such a thing as negotiation.
Yeah, right? So it's like there's a learning curve in that. So does being a poor communicator make you a bad sub? It can make you a new sub. But dishonest communication makes you a bad sub. Bad sub.
Yeah.
Go into your kennel.
Kushla, that's true. If the D type doesn't follow this phrase, do not damage property, then both the D and the S have failed. My late husband used to say, don't break your toys. That was his referral to that phenomenon. Like, doms should be careful to not want to break their toys. D-types, medications, health is equally important to know. Absolutely, no question. I mean, and submissives have a right to know if a dominant's going to be mood or mind altered by medication.
Well, that's why we have MedPisa.
That's why we have.
Do you want to talk shamelessly self-promote?
I could shamelessly self-promote. Yeah, because of all of this, and because all of the things we're talking about now are real life scenarios that we've been in to an unfortunate degree. So we developed a protocol we call MITPISA, MITPISA. It stands roughly for marks, injuries and illnesses, triggers, turnoffs, tone and time, proximity, interaction and intention.
Intensity.
Intention.
Intensity.
Intensity. Intensity and interaction.
Intention and intensity.
Yes.
It's all good. It's a mouthful sometimes.
I know. And so safe words, safety, sex, substances, and senses, and then aftercare, afterwards, and anything else. And the fact that I can remember them all is because they fit into this this framework of MITPISA. It's like a mnemonic device for memory. And so if you go through it all and do it from the viewpoint of, it's not just the dom interviewing the sub, it's both parties showing up and answering the questions. And we've discovered all kinds of things along the way. Like, we always ask a sub how they feel about marks, but very rarely does anybody ask the dom how they feel about leaving marks. Not every dom likes leaving marks, right? Not every dom likes looking the next day at like bad bruising and feels good about it, right? And we learned that sort of the hard way, the experiential way. It's not, almost everything we talk about is born out of experience and not out of book knowledge.
And it's changed for me over time.
Yeah.
But it's the set and setting too, right?
It is set and setting.
If my intention isn't to leave bruising and then there's bruising, it's one thing. But if I'm intending to do it, then that's another thing.
Yeah. And am I right? How you feel about that changes from person to person?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, all right. Unrealistic expectations of doms. First and foremost, doms are human. To expect them to be sadistic automatons who are devoid of emotion or other life priorities aside from doming is unrealistic and dehumanizing. Just like doms have limits, boundaries, and aftercare needs that should be respected. If a dom isn't in the mood to orchestrate a scene when the sub wants one, the sub needs to accept that. Likewise, if a dom is preoccupied with other concerns, the sub should be supportive rather than frustrated. It's simply not feasible to expect a dom to devote all their time to doming. Even in 24/7 dynamics, it's not the dom's responsibility to manage every aspect of a sub's life or fix all their problems. Subs should be their own people.
I like this person.
Yeah, this write-up? Yeah. Unwillingness to research kinks and safety. Perhaps a more subtle sign of bad submissives, this one is related to having unrealistic expectations of DOMs. Just because DOMs are generally in charge of scenes doesn't mean they should have to do all the prep work on their own. Subs should surely thoroughly familiarize themselves with SSC, rack and prick, should take it upon themselves to learn about the kinks they want to explore. For example, when Mimsy told Vagabond she was interested in knife play, he was curious as well, but he asked her to research which knives were best. This was a completely reasonable request and then something she was happy to do. Not only does active participation from the sub relieve the Dom of some of the research and development burden, it ensures that the sub is equally aware of safety protocols and best practices. Right? I mean, and that's why when in all of our classes, we have everybody participate from the top and the bottom. If for no other reason than to make sure that people who identify with being on the right side of the slash at least understand safety, right? It's hard to know, advocate safety for yourself if you don't know what that looks like in the modality that you're looking to engage in.
It's the difference between, is this rope supposed to be going around my neck, to this rope is not supposed to be going around my neck.
Exactly.
That's kind of like the straightest way to put that shit.
Yeah. It's hard when you do give your sub something to research and they refuse, but then blame you for not. Well, that's exactly...
What? No.
Exactly one of the
now, here's another thing. I was listening to this person before talking about his house subs not wanting to learn how to do things because they're not tops or they're not dominant because they weren't doms. And I says, absolutely not. It is now your responsibility to learn how to do it as a sub, because now if I want you to service top, that's your responsibility. And it's like when people fail so that they don't have to pick up responsibility.
Right.
That's exactly. My game.
Yeah. And yeah, because they learn together. It's a great thing, right? It's like, these things are all opportunities to get closer together.
Yeah.
If you take them up, right? If you like
Now imagine this. Imagine you are a rope bunny and you are single, but you know your shit with rope. And then you meet someone vanilla and you guys hit it off really well and this person's like the soulmate, but oh my God, what if they're not into rope? And then you find their access point into bondage and rope, and then you walk them and you're able to do this process with them, leading them down this road of connection.
Yeah, this is where what we call topping from the bottom is beneficial, right? Leading someone who has less experience than you do, someone who in the position of top and you're in the position of bottom for interaction's sake. And
I wouldn't call that
experience.
topping from the bottom. I call that teaching.
Teaching.
That's not topping from the bottom. Topping from the bottom is very self-serving.
That's fair. So we don't be confused with the terminology.
Leave that shit in negative connotation.
Okay, fair enough. But definitely, I mean, when the submissive is the one with more experience in the lifestyle and more experience in interaction, then they should step into the role. If you care for the person,
teach them.
Teach them, absolutely.
Teach them.
Isn't it true subs shouldn't teach their doms to be their doms? Learn from yes, but doms need doms.
Yeah, I would say mentorship matters too, but what if there is no mentorship? What if you're in like Minnesota, like somewhere where you have small or no community, and the person's trying to learn? It's like what we were talking about is finding confidence. Confidence is what steers in dominance, right? It's not just knowledge, but it's the ability to apply the knowledge. But it's also like that's where compassion and patience come in. Yeah. Because
and it's a type of open-mindedness to say, I'm the one, I know more, I can help teach, support, right? It gets us out of that subly sub and domly dom projection of what those roles should be and shouldn't be, right? Yeah. Like the sub should never be in the position of helping to guide the dom is a very black and white way of looking at it, and not as helpful as understanding that, the dom should be learning and doing, they shouldn't be completely dependent upon the more experienced sub to learn everything, but there's no harm in supporting that person while they learn. If you have a connection, like you said, like you meet each other and you have a good connection and you want to incorporate kink into that connection, and you're the one with the more experience.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, I would imagine it comes down to communication style too, right? So that the, high maturity is absolutely needed, 100%. It's the ability to, and I don't want to even say mold, because I see it as presenting a person an opportunity to grow into their own identity with it.
Yeah.
Think of it as, but then that's...
Well, in some ways, though, I mean, I see the comment about, the power dynamic slipping, right? Because in some ways, we're not really talking about the power dynamic so much as we're talking about skills. I mean, some of it can be about the dynamic itself, but I was thinking of it more in terms of like the different kinds of engagements when the sub has more experience with
yeah,
different modalities and the safety protocol and all of that stuff, right? But I agree, there needs to be a general sense of how the power dynamic's going to be.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
like that
yeah.
needs to be in place. Like
So
the person
maybe,
in the dominant role needs to have a sense of being dominant enough to engender the sub's trust and respect from a dynamic standpoint. But then the sub's greater experience can help.
For example, check this out. So I'm going to try to pull this out of something I witnessed recently over an MS couple that I know. DS couple. I would say more MS, but they say it's DS. They just don't know it's MS. And I've known them for about 2 years. And when I first met them, they were hard MS, and she was the lead, and he's the follow, hardcore, black and white. And recently I saw them, and their relationship shifted in the sense of the desire for vulnerability, where they were approaching each other more equal.
Yeah.
Because of the desire of vulnerability. In turn, teaching him to find his power and confidence in leading that dance.
Right.
Never taking away from their power exchange, because she's always the queen.
Right.
But in this circumstance, sharing vulnerability in that space like that, ultimately coming back to what you're saying, if the power exchange is established and this is something new that they're implementing, is a different thing than a new relationship where the person wants you, the sub is with a new dominant to the lifestyle who's new to power exchange and new to modalities, is a different experience and process altogether.
Yeah.
I want my new boyfriend to be Dom, and I want him to tie me. That's what that is.
Stamp your feet.
No, but that's real. But that's real, right? And it's like, how does this person find access to it?
Yeah.
So that they can find enjoyment and there's no pressure. And rope is my jam in doing that.
Right.
Right. I like to do that because of how I approach it, how I teach it.
Right.
Giving the person who has no confidence, almost absolute confidence by the end of the class, so that they can take it and make it their own. And the experienced sub doesn't have to steer them more so than experience at that.
Right. Well, I mean, and I think we teach most of the modalities that we teach from the standpoint of the lowest entry point for confidence, right? So that, you don't come out of a flogging class, some flogging professional, but you can come out of it saying to yourself, I can do this. Yeah. Right? With the confidence to pursue it. The same thing with rope. Like we teach basic rudimentary approaches to rope that allow a person to say, I can do this. And then, and then after that, you go to YouTube, right? Like you don't need us to teach you the stuff you can learn on YouTube.
Yeah. Once you know that you can do it and you can do it with confidence and intention, that's why I fucking love that rope class. It's like, anyway.
I know.
Sorry. Where were we?
This is the last one here.
Emotional, manipulative, or abusive behavior. You read Unwillingness to Research Kink Sensation? Yeah,
we just talked about that.
From the sub, the bad sub side. Pressuring or cajoling a dom into engaging in an activity they've said they aren't interested in is manipulative behavior and is another sign of a bad submissive. This can manifest in a few ways. A sub can overtly pressure the dom by whining or complaining, or they could use more subtle tactics. For instance, if a Dom has made it clear they're not into choking and the sub responds by attacking the Dom's credibility, it takes a really serious Dom to be into edge play. This is emotionally manipulative. Brat and brat tamer relationships can be especially risky to people on both sides of the slash, since the Dom is likely up for some degree of playful disrespect from the brat. Why don't you make me? A malicious sub can use that as an excuse for verbal abuse. Make me do it, bitch. They're demanding more, contributing less. No, that last one was a relationship I was in where they wanted CNC and they wanted all that intense stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like, listen, my body does not respond to that. Like, I'm not into that. And there was some pushing around that.
Yeah.
But
and it's manipulative. It's every bit as manipulative for the bottom to use shaming and belittling tactics to try to get what they want as it is for the Dom to do it.
I mean, and that one's a very particular two-way street. Well, a real sub would.
Right.
Right?
Right.
It's the same thing.
A real Dom.
A real Dom
if you
would.
really knew what you were doing. All of that stuff.
Yeah.
Any of that kind of communication. I don't even care if it's dynamic or not dynamic. It's manipulative.
So, demanding more and contributing less. A healthy DS relationship consists of give and take. Despite being the submissive, you don't need to give more than... Despite being the submissive, you don't need to give more than your dominant. There should be a basic understanding, a layer of respect, trust, and compatibility that you can build upon. In order to create this base layer, both parties need to be contributing to it. Know this, you know that your submission isn't just given to anyone who claims to be a Dom.
Yes, and then this one is red flags in a toxic dominant partner.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, that's what this is.
How to spot red flags.
Yeah, we've already done some of that. We could jump to, because I think this is interesting enough to mention.
Oh yes.
This toxic enabling. I found this thing called toxic enabling, which I thought was really, really interesting.
All right. So, what is toxic enabling? In modern times, toxic enabling refers to behaviors or patterns that directly or indirectly perpetuate and sustain unhealthy actions within a relationship. It typically occurs when one person, enabler, actively or passively supports or even facilitates the destructive actions of another person, the enabled or the toxic individual. As such, to enable someone means to proverbially add rocket fuel to their campfire, allowing destructive behavior to persist and flourish. At the same time, it stunts the personal growth of both individuals, trapping them in a vicious cycle of dysfunction and codependency, making it difficult to even ask for help, let alone set on a path to recovery. What is an enabler in a toxic relationship? In this context, an enabler is any person who takes on a supportive or protective role toward a toxic individual. This can be a friend, family member, romantic partner, or any other person from an enabled individual's vicinity. Being an enabler, an individual will often go to great lengths to justify the toxic person's behavior, make excuses for their actions, and shield them from the consequences of their own decisions. However, in doing so, they're inadvertently reinforcing the negative patterns that need changing. One thing must be noted here. Enablers may not be aware of their enabling behavior. Their actions are seldom thought out and hardly ever malicious. Rather, they stem from strong emotions such as love, fear, or a genuine desire to help and empower, but may also be a result of misplaced sense of responsibility. Unfortunately, when it comes to the enabled individual, the situation can turn into a complete polar opposite. A toxic person may, and often does, turn their partner's caretaking tendencies into a tool of manipulation, driving the enabler to even further commit to their misbegotten goal. This can have profound and lasting negative effects on the enabling individual. As such, it is imperative to learn to recognize the signs and patterns that typically accompany the role of an enabler in a relationship. There's a lot of shit, man.
Well, no, this is the enabler. This is other stuff. That doesn't. This is a different thing.
So then it's just
these are the signs. These 6 signs of top.
Identifying enabling patterns. Yep.
Yeah.
Identifying enabling patterns is not easy, especially if you're the one being the enabler. The cues of this behavior are subtle and often and not immediately apparent. However, if you know exactly what you're looking for, they become more than obvious. Here's what you need to pay attention to. Rationalization. As we've mentioned, enablers will often try to justify, downplay, or make excuses for their partner's harmful behavior, sometimes even blaming their actions on external factors. Self-sacrifice. Putting a partner's needs and desires above one's own, even to the detriment of personal, mental, and physical well-being, is a telltale sign of codependency, which can be considered one of the bases of enabling behaviors. 3. Self-neglect. To be able to enable someone else, a person usually must put their dreams, interests, hobbies, and goals on the back burner. Conflict avoidance. Enablers often go to great lengths to avoid conflict or confrontation with their toxic counterpart. This may involve keeping secrets, excessive apologizing, walking on eggshells, and pretending that everything is peachy when in reality it's the exact opposite. Caretaking. To an extent, an enabler may view their partner as helpless. This can cause them to take enormous responsibility for themselves and in virtually every aspect of their life and relationship. Perpetuating dependency. By continually providing moral, emotional, financial, or any other form of support that allows for the continuation of destructive behavior, enablers foster further dependency in the toxic individual.
Yeah, I relate to all of that because that all comes under the purview of codependency, which is something that I've always struggled with. And to call it toxic enabling amps up the feeling of like why it's important to not do those things, right? We've sort of gotten soft on the sense of what is codependency, or like we take it for granted that everyone's got a little bit of codependency, et cetera, et cetera. But to call it toxic enabling, I feel a little called out too. Yeah, I do those things. I have a tendency to do that stuff, and it's not healthy. So I relate.
The meaning of being an enabler. From the aforementioned factors, or rather as their result, we can derive 3 more characteristics of enabling behavior. Stagnant relationship. Points 1, 4, 5, and 6 show us that this type of relationship is nigh impossible to move from a dead point. A toxic individual gets everything they need from their enabler virtually without having to lift a finger or take on even a minor amount of responsibility. Conflict resolution, which is one of the bases of a healthy relationship, is non-existent since the enabler will go to great lengths to avoid conflict. Stunted personal growth. From points 2, 3, 4, and 5, we can conclude that the enabler won't move from a dead point either, much as their relationship, as all of their time and energy is spent caring for the toxic individual. 3. Perpetual turmoil. Finally, from everything mentioned up until now, it's easy to see how being an enabler can negatively impact every aspect of a person's well-being, including their physical, mental, and emotional health. How do you deal with toxic enablers? Breaking the cycle of dysfunction is no easy task, regardless of the type of dysfunction in question. However, you can initiate a positive change by practicing self-reflection and self-care, seeking support from both family and friends as well as professionals, encouraging the other person to seek professional help, especially if they're struggling with addiction or a mental health issue. In severe cases, breaking away from the relationship for a period of time is the only option to begin help. Difficult as it may be to grasp, sometimes the toxic person doesn't want to change or to change. If that is the case, the best and only thing you can do is prioritize your own well-being. Oh, I think we are froze on Instagram.
Oh, did we freeze on Instagram?
No, it was a phone call.
Oh, so anyway, so we're nearing the end of the hour. That was a lot of stuff, but really good stuff, I thought. And this has just been part of my journey. Being in relationships that were not, I mean, yes, I've been in toxic relationships, back in the beginning, but my ascent out of my very early beginnings has had to include, education, understanding about all these kind of things, about setting boundaries and about how to stand up for myself. Because the thing about this toxic enabling or the codependency is you deny the person the space and consequences that they need to grow. You essentially keep them from self-development. It's so, you know, whatever your justification is, it doesn't stand up in light of its effect, right? And fear is a lot of it. I mean, I saw the word in the comments, and when I'm in that behavior, it's usually fear that's driving it. But some of it is fear of speaking up, some of it's fear of reprisal, some of it's fear of, you know, fear. Fear is just false evidence appearing real. That's what fear stands for, right? Because the truth is you know, if you have your boundaries and you stand up for yourself and you do and say the things that you need to do to be healthy, either the relationship will get better and flourish, or you will see that the relationship isn't one you need to stay in. And by doing all this enabling, all you're doing is forestalling an inevitable outcome, which is that the relationship needs to end, right? And so in the spirit of like personal growth and development, you might as well either get busy trying to fix things or get busy trying to change things, right? But enabling is like a standstill kind of a behavior that just has a steady decline as its impact, as its effect. So I hadn't had a chance to read it all through when I got it. I just knew that I wanted to put it in the notes, and so I'm glad that we did.
Yeah, no, that was a good one.
Yeah. So we're at the end of the hour, which is about the end of the 30 days. Thanks all of you for being here all month. It's been really incredible. We'll be here again Saturday at 6 to talk about, let's see, where is it? I put it on page.
Did we already put it on Fetlife?
Yeah. So the rest of the month is on Fetlife. The way that we've changed, we've done the breakdown. So this Saturday's topic is the journey into discovering your dominance and submission something that makes you proud of yourself. So we're going to talk about that on Saturday, and then on Fetlife.